The phone buzzed on Rahul's desk. Glancing at the screen, unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A chill shot down his spine. It was his own voice, distorted, echoing. Rahul, it's you. From the future. Listen carefully. You'll be in an accident. In 5 minutes. A red truck. The line went dead. Rahul stared at the phone, heart pounding. His own voice predicting a crash? It was absurd. He shook his head, trying to dismiss it. Probably a prank. A bad joke. He forced himself to focus on work, but the voice lingered, cold and menacing in his mind. Minutes ticked by. Rahul felt a growing unease. The air seemed to thicken with every passing second, making it harder for him to breathe. He couldn't help but feel that something was terribly wrong. He glanced at the clock. 5 minutes. Each tick of the second hand felt like a hammer striking his chest, amplifying his anxiety. He was being ridiculous, he thought. It was just his imagination running wild, surely. But the feeling was persistent, gnawing at the edges of his sanity. Still, he couldn't shake off a prickle of anxiety. It was as if his body knew something his mind refused to acknowledge. As if on cue, a red truck, almost identical to the one described, rumbled past his window. His heart skipped a beat. Breath hitching. He felt a sudden rush of adrenaline, his breath catching in his throat. He felt a chill, despite the warmth of the room. The contrast was jarring, making him shiver involuntarily. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. It was a primal reaction, a warning from deep within. It was just a coincidence, he told himself. But the logical part of his brain was losing the battle against his instincts. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been sown. It took root, spreading its tendrils through his thoughts. He couldn't concentrate. The voice, his voice, echoed in his mind. It was a haunting reminder of the premonition he couldn't ignore. The red truck, the warning. It all felt too real to ignore. It was as if the universe was sending him a message. His pulse quickened. His gut screamed at him to do something, anything. He knew he had to act, but what could he do? Panic welled up inside Rahul. He had to call back, had to find out more. Trembling, he dialed the unknown number. The phone rang and rang, but there was no answer, just an endless, empty tone. Desperation clawed at him. He tried again and again. The result was the same, an eerie, echoing silence. Tense, eyes filled with fear and confusion. Each unanswered ring amplified his fear. He was trapped in a nightmare, a terrifying game orchestrated by an unknown puppet master. His own voice, his own fate, seemed to be spiraling out of control. He had to get out, had to escape the confines of his office, of his own mind. The walls seemed to close in on him, suffocating his thoughts and stifling his breath. Every second spent inside felt like an eternity. Without thinking, Rahul grabbed his coat and bolted out the door. His heart raced as he sprinted down the hallway, the echo of his footsteps a constant reminder of the urgency. As he raced down the street, the red truck from before suddenly screeched around the corner, heading straight for him. The roar of the engine was deafening, drowning out the sounds of the city. Time seemed to slow down. Every detail became painfully clear. The glint of the sun on the truck's windshield, the look of determination on the driver's face. Rahul slammed on his heels, barely leaping back onto the sidewalk as the truck thundered past, missing him by inches. His body trembled with the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The force of the wind nearly knocked him off his feet. He staggered, trying to regain his balance, the world spinning around him. He stood there, gasping for breath, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Each inhale felt like fire in his lungs, a reminder of how close he had come to disaster. He had been so close. The phone call, the warning, it had all been real. The voice on the other end had been urgent, almost desperate. But who was the mysterious caller, and why? Questions swirled in his mind, each one more perplexing than the last. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. That night, Rahul lay in bed, unable to sleep. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one more troubling than the last. The events of the day played over and over in his mind like a broken record. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Just as he was about to drift off, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. The sudden noise jolted him awake, his heart pounding in his chest. He froze, his blood turning to ice. The room seemed to grow colder, the shadows lengthening ominously. The screen displayed the same unknown number, the one that had been haunting him for weeks. He stared at it, his finger hovering over the answer button. His mind raced with possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. The phone rang again, the sound piercing the silence like a scream. It was a sound that seemed to echo through the very fabric of the night. He knew, with a dreadful certainty, that it would be his own voice on the other end. A voice that had been warning him of impending doom. His own voice, whispering another chilling warning. A warning that he could no longer ignore, no matter how much he wanted to.